Hey everyone, Guitar Gunner here, coming at you with another video about the Marlin 1895 Trapper Edition. So, some of you who aren't familiar with the new Marlin line, Ruger purchased Marlin I think back in 2018, and then over the last... Okay, let's speed this up a little bit. So basically right here, I'm talking about why I purchased this rifle, or why I purchased it as a Ruger Marlin instead of getting a Remlin or something else. I had heard of numerous quality control issues when Remington took over production of Marlin in 2000. I won't go into details, but basically the process of proving the barrels with Marlin's JM stamp stopped. And although I could have bought a Remlin 1895 CB used, I happened to find this 16-inch Trapper Edition online brand new for under MSRP, and so I couldn't pass that up. I was already used to the peep sights from having owned Skinner sights on all of my 30-30s. However, what really struck me was the stainless steel finish and the beautiful finish on the wood stock and foregrip. I initially didn't like it. I thought that I'd wanted a more classic blued barrel, brown wood stock foregrip look, but the more I looked at this gun, the more I read about it, the more I realized I needed to have it. The big loop played a huge part in that as well, as I was tired of the small loops on my 30-30s. Also a huge plus is that Ruger is now proofing the barrels of these with an RP mark, which gives me confidence in the quality assurance process overall. The idea of being able to hike through the Ozarks with a rifle that packs so much power into a relatively small package is very, very appealing. This thing is like the firearm equivalent of Rocky Balboa. It's short, but it'll knock anything on its ass, from a deer to a buffalo and no doubt a larger game abroad. Okay, so real quick, let's talk about some reloading tips and how I reload, what I reload, and some kind of pros and cons about it. Okay, so what I reload for the 4570 are pretty much what you would find most commonly on the store shelves. That's the 325 grain Hornady FTX round, the 350 grain round shoulder flat nose copper plated round, and the 300 grain jacketed hollow point. The main reason for that is cost and the ease of access to those components. So they're pretty easy to get, and they're not too expensive. So you're going to save some money doing this, but there's going to be some gotchas, obviously, and I'll talk about those a little bit here. Now, anybody who loads this stuff, very important that you get a good crimp on these. Besides the pressure that is put on the bullet inside of the magazine tube, you get pushback whenever the recoil and the forces transfer down that buffer tube. When they transfer down the magazine tube, you can get bullet setback. So after the first round, you can end up having a higher pressure on the next round because the bullet has been set back slightly. So if you're a reloader like me and you haven't done lever guns before, especially with a 4570, keep that in mind because the margin for error is small whenever you're getting up there with the higher pressure loads. All right. There you have it. Well, howdy do. Well, I was way off. I pulled to the left on that one.
Okay, so real quick, something I wanted to show you guys was that the amount of force coming out of the 4570 completely snapped this T-post in half whenever the bullet struck the steel plate that was mounted on the T-post. That's crazy. I've never seen that happen before. So I've already talked about the new Ruger-proof marking on the barrel and the beautiful finish of the gun. Another thing I'd like to get more into is the short 16.1 inch barrel, which makes it easy to carry through dense brush, as I often go off the beaten path when I'm hunting. The ability to add a Picatinny rail was great too, so now I can have a scope and still be able to use the peep sights if need be. That is, so long as I have the right type of scope mount that is skeletonized in such a way that it gives me line of sight through the peep and the front sight blade, which is why you see this Romeo 5 here sticking out like a sore thumb. The weight is also easy to shoulder, and for a gun where weight certainly helps with recoil, I'm able to shoot this thing a lot before getting fatigue or bruising. It certainly helps that I put a foam padded stock wrap on it, but even in the original configuration, it has a beefy butt pad that makes recoil feel about on par with a hefty 30-06 load. So overall, this gun is really easy to carry long distances. It's easily modifiable with more modern touches like an RDS or a scope, and it's small enough to let me take multiple firearms with me down the trail to my favorite hunting spots. The reason I mention this is that I've hunted a gigantic pasture in the middle of the rural Ozarks for the last few years where it was necessary to have both a long-range setup on a tripod as well as a short-range brush gun. The reason being was that you never knew where the deer were going to come out at. Sometimes they'd come out 400 yards away, sometimes a buck would jump out of the woods right next to you, which actually happened to me last year. He's on my wall now. So slapping an LPVO on the 1895 with a 1-to-8x zoom range should solve that problem for me. And while I may not be able to reach out to 400 yards with it, I'll be comfortable taking 200-yard shots with a little bit of practice. So, the 4570 cartridge is a big step up from the 3030 that I was using the last few years. Like I mentioned, I hunt in the Ozarks where the average shot isn't going to be more than 30 to 50 yards. And beyond that, I usually would carry a scoped 30-06 for longer shots if I came into a large pasture. Anyway, like I mentioned earlier last year, I dropped an 8-pointer with my JM stamped Marlin 30 AW. I double lunged it and it dropped to the ground, but it took several minutes to expire. I don't want an animal to suffer, and I couldn't exactly put a bullet in its head, so I just had to wait. The deer had enough energy to whip its head up violently, so if I had approached it too soon, I could have gotten gorged. With the 4570, I dropped a buck this year with a shot that entered above the left shoulder and it exited behind the right shoulder. That buck took about 5 steps and dropped dead completely. When I began processing it, I realized that not only had the 4570 round completely eviscerated both lungs, but it also completely severed the heart. Like, the heart was literally bouncing around in the gut cavity. So I know the deer didn't suffer much. As far as what I don't like about the gun, really there's nothing, except that I need to take better care with my shot placement since it's a 45 caliber round traveling at 2,300 feet per second will turn the front shoulder of a full-size buck into jelly, even if you aimed above it. The only other complaint I have doesn't stem from the gun itself, but from aftermarket Skinner Picatinny rail that I put on it. Be forewarned that if you want to duplicate the Marlin 1895 SBL look with a rail, and you decide to purchase a rail from Skinner, the issue is that it's slightly out of spec with respect to the distance between the rail slots. If you try to mount a double lug cantilever scope mount to the Skinner rail, it will not fit properly without some filing. And, who wants to file a rail down like that? I don't, but just my 2 cents, that's what you'll have to do. Alright, so wrapping things up, obviously what I've improved on since making this video, you saw already I bought the Skinner Picatinny rail that's got an integrated peep sight, so I'm able to mount the SIG Romeo 5, zeroed at exactly 50 yards. That way I can use the SIG RDS if I'm not sure I can get a good shot with the peep sights, and if the target moves closer, I can just shift my field of view down and look through the peeps to take it out. Being able to switch easily between both sights is great, especially if I decide to put a long-range LPVO scope to try and make 100 to 200 yard shots with more powerful FTX loads, since those are kind of designed for longer range hits. The rail also allows me to put a flashlight, in this case an Olight Odin 2000 lumen retina burner on there in case a coyote pops into my field of view while I'm walking back to the cabin at night, or if I decide to use it as a home defense rifle. There's really no end to the amount of customizations you can do, especially if you go the Ranger Precision route and you start making your old school lever gun new school tactical. So that's always something to think about. So if you're still sitting there listening or watching, you have the patience of a saint. Thank you for sticking around and stopping by my channel. If you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe. Hit the like button or the notification bell if you want. I don't expect anybody to do that, but it would be cool. Anyway, go out there, shoot your guns, have fun, and as always, I don't have a catchphrase. Have a good day.